We have with us India's one of the most valorous soldiers, Lieutenant General Kanwaljit Singh Dhillon, who fought Pakistan's cross-border terrorism through 6 stints in Kashmir. He served as the commander of 15th Corps of Indian Army, and just 2 weeks ago, he retired as the Deputy of Chief of Defence Staff, that is General Bipin Rawat, and as well as Chief of the Indian Defence Intelligence. Welcome to Reason, the new Indian show where we get to the reason, to the issues that concern you. Welcome, General Dhillon.
Thank you, ma'am.
I will begin this conversation with extending my condolences for the tragic death of General Bipin Rawat in a crash. And I want to ask this, even though it may sound controversial, but I think for the sake of our audience, I want to ask, do you think the tragic death of Bipin Rawat was just an accident, or was there a conspiracy behind his death?
On the tragic incident of 8th of December, when we lost India's Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, the Air Force inquiry has concluded. The inquiry report has been submitted, and the most relevant aspects of the inquiry have already been made public. They are in the public domain. So as per that, which is there in the public domain, it was an accident.
Let me come to 6 stints that you served in Kashmir. Tell us what went wrong in 89-90 when Pakistan's cross-border terror hit Kashmir and we were caught almost napping.
I was there in Kashmir, North Kashmir, Kupwara. We moved into Kashmir Valley in 1988, and in 89 when this terrorism started, a lot has been written on it, but I would just say it was the Pakistan's propaganda, the false narrative, which hit the common Kashmiri, and that is where the trouble started. And of course, there are political angles to it, there are other social, economic angles to it, which I may not go into details now. But those were difficult times, those are challenging times. And I have seen that history, or portion of that history, 1989, even 19th of January 1990, the date which is written in black ink in the Indian history and Kashmiri history. You have been a victim of that. I was there, man, and I have seen it with my own eyes, and one was fortunate enough to save a lot of Kashmiri families, Kashmiri Pandits, on that fateful night, before that, and even after that.
You referred to that fateful night. What exactly was that? What happened?
Ma'am, that night, as you are aware, a lot of Kashmiri Pandits...
Are you referring to January 19th?
19th of January 1990. I was a young captain in North Kashmir, and a lot of Kashmiri Pandits left Kashmir Valley that night, and few days before that, and it continued for quite some time. And because of the safety, because the situation and the propaganda which was going on was wherein they felt threatened. And that night also, we were out the whole night, taking out the families of Kashmiri Pandits, bringing them to safety, and the next morning, they went their own way in the buses and all, and probably they went towards the Jammu side.
What you're really saying is that this conspiracy theory that Governor Jagmohan drove out Kashmiri Pandits is just a conspiracy theory and there is no truth to it.
Ma'am, I don't want to go into the controversy or the politics of it. I just want to tell you the ground situation.
So exactly, yeah. I would like you to elaborate on the ground situation for our audience, because a lot of politics has been done on this date itself. I want our viewers to know, on the ground, what did you witness?
It was people were living, and we were trying to help them out as far as possible. There was a very limited number of army units in the valley at that time. Rashtriya Rifles was not there. Most of the army was deployed on the line of control. Notwithstanding all that, all-out efforts were carried out by the army and other agencies for the safety of the Kashmiri Pandits who were wanting to leave the Kashmir Valley.
Can we then go back a little further in time and try to understand what happened in 89 that led to the exodus of Kashmiri Hindus?
Ma'am, what little I could understand with my little service as a captain at that time was, the common public was getting the propaganda from across the border. They were being given the false narrative. The political workers or the political parties which were relevant at that time, they were not able to reach out to the last man, and they were not able to sell the idea of India. So that's why the idea of independence or Azadi or Pakistan through Pakistan's propaganda probably hit better than our people, what our politicians in the state at that time should have done. I feel that was what I had a little understanding at that time. Of course, later on, a lot has been written on it, so I will not go into all those aspects.
But was the situation out of control?
I'm not sure about Delhi because, as I told you, I was a young captain serving in one portion of Kashmir. But on ground, there was a Kashmiri Pandits were leaving that state, their homes, and there was a little bit of panic.
But what about insurgency? What about Pakistan's cross-border terrorism? How did it unfold?
Insurgency or the terrorism started sometime in '89,
Yeah.
when a lot of weapons and trained terrorists were brought in from Pakistan occupied Kashmir. A lot of infiltration happened. The line of control, counter-infiltration grid was not very strong. It was for the conventional operations. Hence, there were certain gaps. So those gaps were exploited by the Pakistan Army and the ISI. And that's when a lot of infiltration happened, a lot of weapons came in. And there afterwards, because of the situation in Kashmir and the propaganda and the narrative of Pakistan, a lot of young boys picked up those weapons. And of course, a lot of Pakistani terrorists were also part of the whole thing. And this is exactly when, sometime in late '89, early '90s, the terrorism started, the innocent civilians killing started, the schools were burned down, and there were a lot of propaganda about no one was going to school. So they actually did not want Kashmiris to get educated. If you get educated, you will question the cause, you will question the reason. And those days, ma'am, you would also remember there were wooden schools,
Yes.
the wooden buildings, there were wooden bridges. So they burned down the bridges, they burned down the schools so that children should not get educated. And most of the education fraternity was Kashmiri Pandits. Kashmiri Pandits were in the primary school, they were in the middle school, high school, they were principals, the teachers, in the universities, professors. They were there in the complete education stream. And once the Kashmiri Pandits left, the education system collapsed on its own. The schools were burned down. That was to aggravate the situation further. And this hit the Kashmiri very badly. It hit Kashmir, it hit Kashmiriyat. Any society, I have said this earlier, any society where education goes down, the society goes down, the next generation goes down, the future of that state, that community, that place goes down. This is exactly what happened to Kashmir, and this is exactly what Pakistan had planned.
Was it tough to deal with that kind of population which was actually not even being allowed to educate itself? How was it for you as a young soldier officer?
Ma'am, situation on ground at that time, like I said earlier, there were very few army units. They were Jammu Kashmir Police, and army was mostly deployed on the border, on the line of control, as also the border security force was on the line of control. Since my unit was not deployed on the line of control, we were in the hinterland. So we moved from place to place, starting from South Kashmir, may it be Tral, may it be Shupiyan, Pulwama, may it be Bandipur, Baramulla, Kupwara, Handwara, Sopur. So we were going around wherever the incidents were happening of terrorism or wherever the situation was becoming worst. So we used to go operate there, carry out operations, and slowly, and the question you asked about the population. I must tell you, population in Kashmir is always very innocent. They are very intellectual people. They are well-read. They want progress. They want sadak, bijli, pani. They want their good livelihood. They want their... Kashmir is basically an agrarian society. They want their apple crops, their almonds, their walnuts to sell, their saffron to sell. So they are today also and that time also. They were more involved and bothered about their own livelihood. It was very handful of the people who were into radicalization, who were into anti-India propaganda, who were into terrorism. So those handful of people took different shades as the time passed by. Some became active.
Was it difficult for the army initially?
Initially, since we were not into such operations and we had never been into the villages for any operations, we had only gone to villages for iftar parties, we had only gone to the villages for Holi Diwali with Kashmiri Pandits. So we had not gone into the villages with this type of a operational posture. So yes, built up area battles, whether it is conventional or counter-terrorism or coordinate search. Operations in built up area are very, very complex because there are civilians involved, there are children there, there is a collateral damage. So, and especially in those days when all the houses were of wood, and as you know, pine wood has got a lot of oil in it. And the oil lasts for 100 years. So a little bit of a fire in a pine wood built house can burn down the whole village.
Yeah.
It burns like a furnace. So these were the challenges and we were aware of it. Some we learnt by and by, some we learnt on the job, but the professional army, the professional ethos of Indian Army, the training for such operations, I think it saw us through, and we were very comfortable after some time, and we knew exactly how to handle the public, how to handle the civilians, how to handle the infrastructure while carrying out a surgical type of a precision operation.
The narrative around the world was that Indian Army is an occupier, Indian Army is an oppressor. There was this narrative for a very long time until, in fact, recently, that Indian Army was the perpetrator of human rights violations in Kashmir. One, my question is, how did that image emerge in Kashmir? And second, why was the Indian Army not able to counter this kind of propaganda that ran around the world?
Ma'am, this whole issue of propaganda, false narrative, radicalization and terrorism, this goes hand in hand, it supports each other. They are built on each other so that they take the strength for each other. And all these are very systematically, in a very synchronized manner, run by Pakistan. Now, this issue of human rights, Indian Army being an occupational force, was another narrative which was propagated by Pakistan. The numbers which they talk about of the Indian Army soldiers which are there, I can tell you not even 1/10 of them are there, including the line of control. And coming down to the human rights per se, ma'am, Indian Army, Government of India, we have zero tolerance for any human rights violation, and we have a very effective State Human Rights Commission in Jammu and Kashmir, and a very, very volatile and effective National Human Rights Commission. All the complaints which came up, they have been vetted, they have been gone into and inquired. And wherever, even in 1% involvement or action was taken by malified intentions, action has been taken, people have been sacked, people have been sent to jails. It has happened, but those incidents have been far and few. More than 99% of the times, all these human rights violation cases or complaints have been found to be untrue. We have a very fine judicial system, we have a very effective judicial system. So, no one can challenge us on our human rights record. And within the army, the internal institutions of inquiries and court of inquiries and court martials, investigations, we have a very strong internal mechanisms in the army, and we are a very speedy organization. We believe justice delayed is justice denied. So we have been every time very, very upright and forthright in all such issues. But the propaganda, the false narrative of Pakistan still continues. When you ask any Kashmiri on ground, they will say all this is false.
How is it that the Indian Army was not able to present their point of view through these 30 years?
Indian Army does not believe in narrative building. We do not believe in propaganda. We believe in transparency. We believe in good faith during the operations, and we believe in proper care of the civilians. The collateral damage should not happen. So our career or our record speaks for us. We don't have to go to some foreign media which is biased or which is paid for and get some photographs printed. We don't, you talked about a particular terrorist. Ma'am, a mouse with a Facebook account who is hiding from place to place, if he is killed or he is crushed under some boot somewhere, does not make news. I think it's just a normal thing. But the way the narrative was built and who lost in this whole issue, let's talk about this incident of this terrorist only. Now, when this incident happened, who lost? Who lost his property? Who lost his kith and kin? Who lost his friends? Who lost his job? Who lost the tourists which did not come to Kashmir? Who lost his livelihood? Who could not pay his sumo installments? Who could not buy chara for his pony? Common Kashmiri. Common Kashmiri mother lost her son. Common Kashmiri lost his job. Common Kashmiri policeman lost his life. Common Kashmiri shopkeeper lost his clientele. Common Kashmiri sumo and poniwala lost his tourists whom he could not take. There were times when the sumo union people would come to the army and say, sir, इसको थोड़ा कम करो, ये इतना सारा हो रहा है अभी, हमारे से किश्तें नहीं दी जा रही हैं हमारी sumo की. So the loss was of common Kashmiri. And what is the propaganda? Propaganda by Pakistan was, this is for a Kashmiri cause. If it is for a Kashmiri cause, the Kashmiris should have gained. But Kashmiris unfortunately have lost in each and every episode sponsored by Pakistan.
We saw a trend that a lot of common people came out in big numbers to join the funeral. There was funeral politics. Clearly there was a pattern to it. Clearly, Pakistan was up to something. But why did the Indian Army, or I could say the entire security establishment, not see that there was a pattern, one? Second, why was it that Burhan Wani, if he was not an important militant, or even though by his own admission he was Hizbul Mujahideen's champion and Hizbul Mujahideen's visions champion in Kashmir, he wanted to set up a caliphate. But then why did the Indian Army allow such a massive funeral in Kashmir? Why were dead bodies handed over to families of terrorists?
Indian Army, the security forces, I'll say the team security forces, which includes the Indian Army, Jammu Kashmir Police, SOG, BSF, CRPF, intelligences and civil administration. Ma'am, we honor humans. We honor human values. We honor human rituals. We honor human life. Now, funeral or a decent funeral is a basic human right. We as security forces did not want to interfere. He had a bad life. He was a terrorist. He got killed in an encounter. But he is and should have got a decent funeral, because we are an army which lives by certain ethos, certain culture, certain traditions. We are not like Pakistan Army, which did not take their own soldiers' bodies back in Kargil. They disowned the dead bodies of their own soldiers. And if you remember those images, Indian Army gave them a decent funeral, which is due to a soldier. So we were very clear, we did not want to interfere with the local culture, local religion, religious practices, local ethos. But when we realized these funeral processions where people were brought in herds at the gunpoint, these funeral processions were utilized for new terrorist recruitment. And that is when I was the corps commander in Kashmir. That is when we put an end to it. We said, if this graceful occasion, of a respectful occasion of a human funeral is being misused by Pakistan. In Islam, funeral has a very pious place. And Pakistan, if it is championing the cause of Islam, was misusing that pious practice of Islam for his nefarious designs. That is when the security forces and the administration took a decision that no more funeral procession. Family was called, Maulvi Sahib was called, a funeral was carried out as per the Islamic traditions in the presence of the family members. But these processions were not allowed. And that brought down the recruitment in Kashmir tremendously. So we stand for human values, we stand for human rituals, we stand for religious practices, we stand for religious freedom, and we stand for everything connected to human grace. That is the ethos of Indian Army and the security forces.
During your tenure in Kashmir, other episodes also happened. Some of the historic decisions were taken during your tenure. Walk us through one. Of course, we saw after Pulwama terror attack, there was Balakot. And of course, we also saw the major decision of nullification of Article 370 and 35A. How did the army facilitate that atmosphere of peace and stability during those momentous occasions in Indian history?
Since earlier we were talking about 88, 89, we are talking of Indian Army. Now situation is different. Now we are team security forces. Now we do not identify ourselves as one entity. Neither of us. So we all identify ourselves as a very cohesive, synergized, good team, and we call it team security forces. So ma'am, you referred to Pulwama incident. After Pulwama incident, that was a very sad incident. I pay my condolences to the families of 40 brave hearts of CRPF. After that incident, team security forces got together, and within 100 hours, we eliminated the module. I remember you were there in that press conference which happened on 19th February. You had asked a very pertinent question that time also. But within 100 hours, the team security forces eliminated the module which had planned, executed the Pulwama incident. And thereafterwards, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Pakistan-based, Pakistan-funded, Pakistan-organized, Pakistani-equipped, proscribed terror tanzim, Jaish-e-Mohammed was targeted, wherein all their commanders were eliminated within few days of their becoming their commanders. A time had come when Pakistan would pass a message that so-and-so will be the Jaish-e-Mohammed commander. This so-and-so would refuse to be the commander, because he knew if I become a commander, my days are numbered. So we had brought down the terror tanzeems and terror leadership in such a way. Immediately after some time, Zakir Musa was killed, then other terrorists were killed. Then talking about this incident of historic decision of the Indian government of abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, delimitation process, and bifurcation of the Australian state into two union territories. 5th of August 2019 is a historic date in the history of Jammu and Kashmir and the history of India, where the government of India, as per the relevant law, with the parliamentary vote and president's assent, passed a law wherein these laws were nullified. Then afterwards, again the team security forces, intelligences and the civil administration. I must compliment the Jammu and Kashmir civil administration. They played a major role in the peace which prevailed after 5th of August. They, at the sake of their own safety, reached out to the last man, last post in far-flung areas for daily needs, for medicines, for hospitals, for even mobile ATMs, mobile grocery shops, mobile telephones. So they did a wonderful job. But the team security forces had a challenge after 5th of August that we should not lose even a single Kashmiri life. And secondly, there should be no arson, there should be no burning down, there should be no damage to government property or civilian property. So with these two aims, we set ourselves together and we work together. And rest, as they say, rest is history.
Rest is history.
In Kashmir, not a single Kashmiri innocent life was lost because of a security forces bullet after 5th of August. All the lives which got lost were by the terrorist bullets. So that is the achievement of team security forces, the synergy, the coordination with which they work and mutual faith over each other. I think that was a tremendous, tremendous achievement on part of the civil administration and security forces.
You became a popular star across India when you actually raised this slogan in a way, kitne ghazi aaye, kitne ghazi gaye. And it really captured the public imagination in the last few years. And people look up to you, youth look up to you, and they see you as the soldier who can take Pakistan head on. Tell us, what does this really mean? Kitne ghazi aaye, kitne ghazi gaye?
Now, firstly, every soldier is supposed to take the enemy head on. I have been trained in that. I have been on the job training, and I have been ever since my joining the NDA. This has been the ethos of Indian Army, this has been the ethos of the Indian Defence Forces. So any enemy, not while in uniform, even out of uniform now, I will take on the enemy head on, there is no problem. Now coming down to this line of kitne ghazi aaye, kitne ghazi gaye. As you are aware, Ghazi is a code word for Pakistani terrorists. And it's a very preferred code word for them. And ever since my childhood in Kashmir, or Captain, Major, Lieutenant Colonel, CO, Brigade Commander, there have been a lot of encounters wherein we have killed a lot of Pakistani terrorists, and a lot of them had this code word, Ghazi. One was, which became little famous, was Ghazi Baba, who was killed in Tral. So this module head, Kamran, was a Pakistani terrorist who carried out the Pulwama ID attack. His code name was also Ghazi. So when Kamran was killed, so everyone was in the press conference, this thing was going on. So in the press conference, someone asked, Sab wo Ghazi mar gaya kya, or is Ghazi dead? And that time the press conference was coming to an end. I said, kitne Ghazi aaye, kitne Ghazi gaye, parwah nahi hai, don't worry, we are there. So this line somehow caught the imagination of the country and the youth, not only in civil areas, within the army. As a corps commander after that, wherever I went to any army post on the line of control or in the hinterland, the phrase on the gate used to be, kitne Ghazi aaye, kitne Ghazi gaye. So even today, most of the young officers who send me a WhatsApp message, the opening statement is, kitne Ghazi aaye, kitne Ghazi gaye. It's not good morning. Last statement is, of course, Jai Hind. So that stays. This is how this came in.
Now tell us, as the chief of the prestigious India's Defence Intelligence, what are the challenges that we or you have faced, and did it ever feel that, you know, the sources that you cultivate for information and for gathering intelligence could be double crossing you? Did it ever feel that, you know, you are entering a dangerous zone and you might end up being on the wrong side of the intelligence?
As Chief of Defence Intelligence Agency, all that I know will go with me. So nothing will ever come out, but I can answer this question of how do you check a source, whether he is double crossing you or not. Ma'am, we don't work in isolation. Like defense and intelligence has the military intelligence, naval intelligence, air force intelligence. Then we have the IB, we have the CBI, we have other intelligences, NTRO, RNDW, and we have the state intelligences, we have other national intelligences. So with individual Jammu Kashmir police has the intelligence cell, army has the intelligence cell. So ma'am, all these people put in their intelligence informations. It gets corroborated. It's a very 6-step process. It gets synthesized, it gets sifted. Then if there are voids, we task a particular agency, they give us the intelligence that void is filled. And finally the whole thing is corroborated by each other. Once it is corroborated and found to be true, then it is disseminated. So earlier it used to be done manually. Today, a lot of automation has come into this also, because a lot of intelligence comes in the electronic form. So if somebody is double crossing, there is no way he can get away with it. Or for that matter, any intelligence, whether it is true, 100% true, 20% true, 40% true, with this synthesis of inputs from various intelligence agencies, it's not disseminated till it is corroborated. Unless it is a red hot intelligence, which may lose its relevance in 2 hours. So then it is passed on to the commander on ground straight away. He does his local check and he goes for the strike. So this is how it works. But whatever is a DIA, that's not going to come out.
Can you tell our audience that how is Indian Army coping with this ever evolving change of the nature of war?
All the names which you had taken is, like you yourself said, evolving nature of warfare. All these are things which are happening in bits and pieces as the technology is evolving. But हमारे शास्त्रों में लिखा है साम दाम दंड भेद. So we take our encouragement from those. We take our motivation from those. हर एक काम किया जाएगा दुश्मन से जंग जीतने की है. Everything is fair in love and war. We only concentrate on the war part of it. And that is how Indian Army works. Of course, we keep evolving ourselves, we keep evolving our drills, we keep evolving our techniques as the technology evolves and the adversaries' modus operandi evolve. So we want to be one step ahead of him always. So,
are we one step ahead of the enemy?
yes, ma'am. And here I would like to clarify one thing. One incident which happens, take for example Pulwama. One incident that happens comes in the media, comes in the public domain, comes in the knowledge of everyone. But 99 such incidents which have been averted or avoided by the alertness of the security forces and intelligence agencies. Neither we tell nor anyone comes to know. We don't tell because we don't want the enemy to come to know how we averted it, how we avoided it. We don't want him to be more alert next time. But then that one incident should not become a barometer for judging any agency. It's like a housewife, man. Ek din roti jal gayi, that doesn't mean she is not a good cook. So it is like that. We have to cook 3 meals a day every day for 365 days, ma'am. So the number of incidents which are avoided, no one comes to know. One odd incident which goes out or which gets implemented by the enemy should not be the barometer to judge the efficiency of our security forces. I would like to personally tell this to the nation and the countrymen and women. This is not the way to look at our security forces.
So tell me, what are the areas where Army still needs to improve itself or strengthen itself in Kashmir?
In no field, no aspect of life, nothing which we do in life, we can say, now I have achieved the utmost perfection. There is always a scope for improvement. And if you start feeling that you have achieved the ultimate aim, then there is no desire to live for tomorrow. So Indian Army or all security forces or intelligences, there is always a scope for improvement, and there are various aspects which the enemy is trying. The new techniques is trying, evolving technologies are coming in. So we need to keep our eyes and ears open and work in coordination and synergy with everyone so that we don't get surprised. And like I said earlier, we want to remain a step ahead of them, but it is never that we have achieved utmost and now there is nothing more which we want. And there is always a scope for improvement, and we look at it in a very positive manner, very pragmatic manner, and we always strive for improvement.
But are there any specific areas where we need to pay attention as of now? Are there any challenges ahead which we should be thinking about?
Ma'am, all the challenges which you referred to earlier, the technology-based challenges, because technology evolves every day. The mobile phone which you buy yesterday is obsolete by tomorrow. So to keep up with the technology, and a lot of intelligence or the terrorist activities are technology based. May it be communication, may it be propaganda, may it be the IDs and other things. Hence we need to keep evolving in that. So I think that's a continuous process. That is one field. Technology is one field which we need to keep updating ourselves. Not that we are obsolete, because technology is evolving at a very rapid. So that aspect is always a prime aspect in all our coordination meetings.
As Deputy of the CDS as well as Chief of the Indian Defence Intelligence, I would like to know whether India is really prepared for a two-front war or maybe a multiple-front war.
Ma'am, this particular question has been answered by the late CDS General Rawat. It has been answered by the Army Chief, Naval Chief and Air Force Chief. And the government's resolve to protect the sovereignty of the nation under all circumstances, I am not even talking about number, all circumstances remains supreme, and it will be done, and we are, I can say we are as defense forces and the nation are prepared for any eventuality which may happen. We will protect the sovereignty of the India's land.
China and India had a standoff and Indian Army actually stood its ground. Can you tell us how did Indian Army come to stand up against China in Ladakh at LAC?
Ma'am, like I said earlier, the defense forces capabilities, the government of India's resolve to protect the sovereignty of the nation at all costs against everyone who is threatening it was the main aim and was the way we went about it.
One last question. Several leaders in the last decade or so have been saying that more than anybody else, it's China that we should be fearing, that China is the greatest threat. Does the Indian Army or does the Indian defense have a similar view?
Ma'am, we are the only country in the world which have two nuclear adversaries, one on the West Pakistan, one on the North. And as a defense force, we always analyze their capabilities. What is the capability militarily and economically to support that military action vis-a-vis Pakistan, vis-a-vis China. And we always keep evolving our techniques. We always keep readjusting our own forces to make sure the threat which is emerging or which we are visualizing because of our continuous analysis is countered by all our might. So I would say it's a continuous process to assess the capabilities of your adversaries and make sure you are prepared at all times for that, for any eventuality, like I said earlier. So it's a process of evaluating the enemy's strengths, covering your own deficiencies and making sure you are up to it on the D-Day.
Well, with this, we must end this fascinating conversation. This is certainly not ending here. We hope to bring KJS Dhillon once again to talk further on this issue. Thank you so much for listening in.
Thank you. Jai Hind.